Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hari Hari Bol, Hari Festival ki jai. Jai Guru Maharaj.
Happy Panyati Festival.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
क्या आपने जो फोटो बोलते हैं हरि बोल बोलते हैं ना हरि बोल बोलते हैं कि हरि बोल थैंक यू
Hari Bol.
जय जय
Jai Jai.
जय जय
Panyati Festival ki jai. Hari 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 Bol.
Nityananda Gauranga
Nityananda Gauranga. Nityananda Gauranga.
ki
Jai. Panyati Festival ki jai. Hari 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 Bol.
हरि बोल अर्जुन प्रभु
Doi Chira Festival ki jai. Hari Bol.
One Indian kind of challenge that you preaching here, go preaching. He's telling to Prabhupada that why you preaching we Hindus? You know, we all know everything. As Hindus always think, we know everything. We know everything. But actually they don't know many things. I'm sorry. So they are saying this. So they are telling Prabhupada, why don't you go to preach in Pakistan? So Prabhupada said, okay. So he's telling Brahmananda and Gargamuni, go. And at that time the war is going on between East Pakistan and West Pakistan. And they are going there. So it was like that at the time. So this Gopal, he's thinking, oh my gosh, Srila Prabhupada told and I have to get married with her. But of course, he didn't get married finally, but he was in anxiety for a week. So that is the situation. So anyhow, I am going to hear Chandrasekhar Prabhu is here next to me. And I'm going to ask Chandrasekhar Prabhu. We maybe have a time. I think the Aarti is going to be at 1 o'clock. They told me. 12:30 will be offering, 1 o'clock will be the big Aarti. So we have a good time. So 7 to 10 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Chandrasekhar Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
So I was another face in the crowd when Prabhupada would visit. So I didn't get close to Prabhupada, but it just so happens that I was there when this picture was taken. Right here. This is a painting of a picture, and it was taken at 439 Henry Street in Brooklyn in 1972. That's not Prabhupada's danda. Prabhupada didn't travel with a danda. That's Sudan Maharaj's danda. And I traveled with Sudan Maharaj at the time. I remember we went out with 150 devotees to Times Square and had a kirtan with Sudan Maharaj, who was very dear to Prabhupada. He pioneered Japan. And he came from an entertainment family. His family were dancers in Hollywood, and so was he. And when he danced, everybody came over to watch. We're going to have a big Harinam in Times Square this Friday, by the way, if you want to come and join us. Haribol. So when Prabhupada's picture was being taken, the brahmacharis were hanging out of the windows. There's maybe 8 or 10 windows, and the brahmacharinis were on the other side, and we're all watching this photo session with Murli Vadana. And so they're staging Prabhupada with Sudan, because Sudan was short, so about the same size as Prabhupada. So he had appropriate danda, as you can see. There's a crushed purple velvet cloth in back. They hung on the wall. And so Prabhupada was standing, then he was sitting with all of his books, and Prabhupada leaned over to the photographer and pointed right at me. And he's talking, and he's pointing at us. And so they're having a little discourse. And so I asked him afterwards, I said, what did Prabhupada tell you when he was pointing at us? Prabhupada said, can my disciples be in the picture with me? Nice. Sudan Maharaj eventually left the movement. He was a very, very wonderful devotee. But the devotees found him when he was sick, and he was dying. And when he left his body, his mother was there, who was a simple black woman, simple Christian. And as he left his body, she was saying, go to Prabhupada, Sudan, go to Prabhupada. Pritaputra Maharaj was the first French sannyasi. And he also left. There's an attrition rate when you fight Maya. So he left for some time, but then the devotees found out he was sick also and passing away. No devotees were with him when he left his body, but the devotees asked the doctors, they said, what happened? Can you tell us? He was in a semi-comatose condition. But the doctor said that as he left his body, he sat up and he said, Prabhupada, you have come, and he left his body. So, I remember one time there's some devotees that are out here. I was helping Charadeshna yesterday. He has Parkinson's. He couldn't make it today. And my friend Gayatri Das, he's doing some preaching in Nashville, and he was a big figure here in Atlanta. So one time Gayatri was told by Balavanta, Prabhupada's coming, but you stay on book distribution, that's the real service. So Gayatri never got to meet Prabhupada, and he regrets it. But they told me the same thing in Chicago when Prabhupada arrived in Chicago. Said, you stay here and fix that up, and we're going to greet Prabhupada. I said, yes, Prabhu, and I jumped in a van and went to the airport. I just saw that arrival the other day when I was following Srila Prabhupada in 1974. He came to the Chicago airport. You didn't have to pass through TSA, you just went right to the gate. It was like 300-400 devotees chanting, and it was quite ecstatic. So, in one part of the film, Prabhupada came out, I was in back of him chanting Jai Prabhupada, and then he drove away and I was standing on top of a garbage can going, Jai Prabhupada. I'd never seen that before. So, we went back to the temple and Prabhupada paid his respects to Kishore and Kishori. I have a son, his name is Kishore, and I have a daughter, her name is Kishori. So you know which deities I like. So Prabhupada paid his obeisances to Sri Sri, Kishore and Kishori. They asked Prabhupada, why does Krishna's name come first? Prabhupada said, I saved the best till last. So Prabhupada paid his Dandavat obeisances right in front of the deities, and I saw those two lotus feet right in front of me. Guess what I did? No, I put my head right on Prabhupada's feet. I took the risk, so it worked out. And then later, Prabhupada was giving class, and my GBC was holding a garland and chandan like this. And so I got it right away. I said, oh, let me help you. I snatched the chandan away from him. And he garlanded Prabhupada. You need two hands to garland Prabhupada. He wasn't getting that chandan back. So I said, Guru Maharaj. One time in New Vrindavan, there's a picture of Prabhupada on his Vyas Puja in 1972 at the Bhagavad Dharma Discourses. It was a garland that I made because I traveled with Vishnu Janaswami and Radha Damodar, and I made the garlands for Radha Damodar every day. And our budget for every day was $0. So Vishnu Janaswami called me Banamali. Banamali is the name for Krishna, which means one who wanders the forest looking for flowers. So I would always be traveling, looking at neighborhoods, wondering what flowers to steal in the morning after Mangal Arti. So anyways, I made the party's garland. Prabhupada had 20 garlands piled up to his head, and so many. And before his lecture, he took them all off except mine. Oh, yeah. So I'll tell one more story. There's more. So Prabhupada was leaving Chicago, and I knew where Prabhupada was coming out. I knew the exit. So I positioned myself by the door on the ledge, two ledges on either side. And in front of me there's like 300-400 devotees on the sidewalk, in the street, on the other side of the street. Just enough room for cars to pass by slowly. And we're all having kirtan, waiting for Prabhupada to exit. And so Prabhupada eventually came out. He was right next to me. And Brahmananda was there. And everybody paid their obeisances the best they could. They jumped up and they had kirtan. So I'm standing right next to Srila Prabhupada, just like I wanted. And so the kirtan's really going. It's really very sweet and ecstatic. People are crying, jumping. And then the ladies, they started dropping flower petals from the sewing room upstairs, the deity sewing room. And the flower petals are falling on Prabhupada's head. And Brahmananda turns to Prabhupada and says, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's looking at the whole crowd. He's like surveying the whole crowd from one side to the next like this, smiling, beaming. Brahmananda says, Srila Prabhupada, the demigods are showering flowers on you. And Prabhupada became very grave. And he looked at the crowd one more time. And he said, yes, they're all demigods.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
A minute. So I was just going to add one more thing about Sudama Maharaj. Sudama Maharaj was he was sent, he went to Japan first. He told Srila Prabhupada to go to Japan. He was a very fired up devotee. But sometimes what happens, Maya is so strong that he just, if you are not careful in our devotional service, then Maya is waiting for us to catch him. So somehow or other he involved in the not good activities, and he had actually HIV, that's what he called, HIV. He had that, and he was even wearing the earrings, and he wasn't in a good consciousness. But our Mother Gayatri, Amrendra Prabhu, who is a lawyer, you probably all know Amrendra Prabhu, famous Amrendra Prabhu, lawyer. His wife is a Gayatri. She left this body. She also was we can talk about her for a long time. She was the one, they started the center in Gainesville, Amrendra Prabhu and Gayatri. And Anand Manjari was also there at that time. So, the Samaradar, the Gayatri, she likes to cook. She was expert. She is the one who introduced this Ekadasi Day, these Gorang potatoes in ISKCON. She is the one who introduced it, Gorang potatoes. She was good cook. She would cook for all the people, all the students in Gainesville. Gainesville is a famous, at that time Gainesville was famous for the university preaching. And she is one to do this. So she moved to LA, anyhow she was in LA, and she would make the cookies and she would go distribute the cookies during the Christmas time. And she would go to the big parties where big people are there. She would just go there. She was a good talker, she was a good preacher. She would go, and she went there and she saw Sudama there in his earrings and but he had this disease. So she kept in touch with him, to Sudama Maharaj, and finally he was so sick that he couldn't, so she called him, have him come. And he stayed in as you know, in LA we have the apartments all near the temple. So she had him give the place in that apartment, and he stayed there. And listen to this. When Mataji, he was not able to serve himself. He was completely bedridden. When Mataji was serving him all the time to him, and devotees chanting the holy name, he left the body. See? Because Srila Prabhupada had told him that you're going to Japan, I'm going to take you back. So even though he had that fall down, you can say, but the point is Prabhupada's mercy is so powerful that whatever we do service for Srila Prabhupada, don't think it's gone in the vain. It's always there. Krishna, whatever we little would do for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, for Krishna, is noticing everything what we do. And we are not doing, it's not happening by our own efforts. It's happening by the mercy of the great Vaishnavas like Prabhupada and all of you. So now I'm going to hand over to Parampara Guru. He's here for a long time in Atlanta.
Hare Krishna. I hate to interrupt this flow of nectar that was coming, but I'll say my little part. Maybe Chandra Shekhar can continue. I was a latecomer. Chandra Shekhar Prabhu was obviously early on, many personal contact with Srila Prabhupada. I met Prabhupada one time when he visited here in Atlanta. It changed my life. My life was changed in the 2 weeks before Srila Prabhupada's arrival. My friend Veda Guyadas, we had been friends from college nearby, and he had become a devotee the preceding fall of 1974, and was living in the temple when it was downtown where the hippies lived on 13th Street. And at the end of 1974, an arrangement was made to rent these 3 buildings. And the temple was moved over here to this location at that time, end of 74, beginning of 1975. Correct? And at some point in there, the news was given that Srila Prabhupada was going to visit. Srila Prabhupada was going to visit this new Atlanta location, and he was going to come near the end of near the end of February, March, coming from I think he had to come over the Pacific. In other words, traveling east, not towards Europe and that way, but traveling east. And he stopped in, I think maybe Hawaii, LA, he went to Mexico City, he went to Caracas, Venezuela, came up to Miami, and then to Atlanta. So by the end of February, Srila Prabhupada arrived here. Now my friend, I was just still living my life, and my friend recruited me, my friend Veda Guya recruited me to come help clean and fix up the temple for Prabhupada's arrival. So for 2 weeks, he would come and pick me up where I was living, not too far from here, and bring me to Mangal Arati. He was getting up even earlier and bringing me to Mangal Arati, and I'm just with the devotees. I know nothing about any of this at that point. And after Mangal Arati, everybody's chanting japa. I'm sitting in the corner looking at the pictures in Prabhupada's books. I mean, that's the level I was at, child life. And I would spend all day from Mangal Arati until 10 o'clock at night just helping devotees do this and that. We're on our hands and knees, scrubbing the little tiles on the floor of the bathroom where Prabhupada's going to stay up here in this building, and just doing anything, scraping paint, painting, on and on and on. All just fundamental cleaning and painting and getting ready. And in the course of that 2 weeks, I'm around the devotees all the time, and I'm listening to what the devotees are saying. They're constantly talking about Krishna and stories from the Bhagavatam, and Vishwamitra heard the ankle bell, and he fell down. He was a big Mahayogi, and he fell. And you're hearing all these things. They talk about this constantly, and I'm hearing and I'm learning. And by the end of 2 weeks, I'm chanting 16 rounds. I'm at Mangal Arati. And I still didn't really know very much, but I understand it's very important, and Srila Prabhupada is very important. He's arriving. So I was here. I'm blessed by Krishna that I could be here by Gaura. You've heard, most of you I'm sure have heard all the stories about Srila Prabhupada arriving. I could tell my version of it. Prabhupada arrived on a Friday morning, mid-morning, sat here. The same Vyasasana. The Vyasasana was being finished as Prabhupada drove up the driveway. Srila Prabhupada was, Balavanta drove him in somebody's, I think, borrowed old Lincoln Continental. But anyway, they didn't just come up Monteleone or up Moreland. Balavanta took Prabhupada so that he actually approached the temple from across the street in Springdale Road. And they came across so Prabhupada could see the beauty. He came through this beautiful, prosperous, opulent neighborhood behind us and came to the temple so Prabhupada could appreciate the standard of the new location, the setting. At that time, there was a little touch of a scruffiness, kind of around the edges there. In-town neighborhoods were kind of like going a little downhill. So just a block or so away, you had a little scruffy in that area, but the core of this neighborhood, Druid Hills, was still very magnificent. This is where the doctors and the lawyers lived. So Prabhupada came to the temple, he drove up the driveway, came in, offered his obeisances. The only deities were Gaura in the center altar. That's why they're still on the center altar. A lot of temples, Radha Krishna will be on the center altar. here, Gaura on the center altar, because Prabhupada saw them here. Jagannath came later, and Radha Madan Mohan came after that. Prabhupada spoke, and he spoke about the mercy of Gaura, and it turns out that he'd been speaking in the same terms in Mexico City, in Caracas. In fact, I'm hearing that he actually chanted Parama Karuna in some of these other places as well. Parama Karuna is famous because Prabhupada chanted it here, but he was in this mood as he's traveling, and context, Krishna Balaram Mandir was going to be open. That inauguration was happening as he went around the world, through here to London and bound back to India. What was ahead for him and for the devotees was the Gaur Purnima festival, and then they all went up to Vrindavan, and the Krishna Balaram Mandir was opened and inaugurated that spring in 1975. So Srila Prabhupada spoke about the mercy of Gaur Nitai. He said that Krishna is more strict. He asked you to surrender, and then I will protect you. He said Gaur Nitai are more merciful. They don't require you to surrender. They just give you the mercy. And as he spoke those words, tears came to his eyes, his voice choked, and that was the end of that. So that evening, he came back to the temple to give a class, and instead of Jai Radha Madhava, he chanted Parama Karuna in a little simpler way. Ajamil chanted in a beautiful, beautiful way, and Prabhupada chanted it like with kartals and Nanga. Actually, when Prabhupada chanted it, nobody could actually, because he was playing ching, 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 and the devotees didn't really know how to follow that beat. They were always do ching, ching, ching. So Prabhupada chanted all the way through, and then he asked for, there were a recording, and he asked for the recording to be played back, and he accompanied himself, the recording, by playing the mridanga. He was asked for a mridanga. He's sitting on the Vyasasan playing mridanga. For his time, the temple mridanga was a little dead, and so one of the Radha Damodar brahmacharis had a nice new mridanga, and he took that and played, accompanied himself, and by that time the devotees knew a little better the words because they weren't familiar with song tunes. So for the rest of the time he was in Atlanta, that Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, we chanted Parama Karuna before class. He spoke morning and evening on Saturday. On that Sunday was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance day. So Srila Prabhupada observed Vyas Puja here. He came in the morning, gave a morning class. He came at noon and gave an hour-long Vyas Puja lecture, and offered the Vyas Puja Arti to this big picture of Srila Prabhupada. Actually, they took one of the Vyasa signs that it was already, the Shringa signs that had already been made. That anyway, one of them, and they built a whole second Vyasa sign there, just like Prabhupada's, right next to it with the marble and everything. And they set the picture up on that, and Srila Prabhupada offered Arti and spoke wonderfully, and then came back a third time and gave an hour-long Sunday feast lecture. Now, during the course of this week, I'm telling you all this because I'm a new devotee, and I'm calling myself a devotee now. At that time, I'm around, and people didn't really think I was a devotee. In my mind, I'm actually starting to surrender. I'm actually starting to think of myself as part of this group. I'm one of these people. That's what was going on inside, and I was starting to hear things about the dust of the lotus feet, and so after Prabhupada would leave, I would go and kind of wipe the floor and try to get the dust of Prabhupada's lotus feet. So little things like that were happening in my life, and but I didn't, I wasn't a devotee, so I wasn't part of people that could go on a morning walk. He went on morning walks here at Piedmont Park those mornings. I wasn't part of the devotees that went to see Prabhupada in his quarters. Like Tamal Krishna Maharaj was here and brought all the Radha Damodar brahmacharis personally up to meet Srila Prabhupada personally, one by one. He got them all a rose. They all went into Prabhupada's, into his room and offered a rose and offered them. So I didn't have that kind of a privilege, but I was still transforming. So But by Sunday afternoon, we knew Prabhupada was leaving on Monday morning. And it was my only chance to have any contact was now. So Prabhupada gave a lecture, and he had like a long question and answer period. And the nature of the questions people were asking, they were asking Prabhupada to comment on like the bona fides of like Guru Nanak. And one person asked about Jesus Christ. Where does Jesus Christ fit in all this? And I'm going to backtrack briefly. When I was in college, I had a friend who was into an Indian, Swami Guru at that time, called Meher Baba. And Meher Baba was sort of famous at the time, at that period of time. Maybe not as famous as Maharishi with transcendental meditation, but he had his little following, and then my friend was a follower. And Meher Baba claimed to be God. He said, publicly, openly, he said, I am Krishna, I am Allah, I am Jehovah, I am like that. And so, classic. This is a classic, I am God, Swami, or not really Swami, he's actually Sufi. But anyway. So, from the time I heard all this, I was bewildered. I'm a college student, just coming from a small town nearby, and somebody's claiming to be God? What if they are? How do you respond? What do you do? So I had that perplexity, that sort of confusion. And that somehow or another, that was a fundamental question in my heart. So you had all these questions about this and that, and then there's a pause in the questioning. And you knew this is it. It was about to end. That this whole session, this whole meeting was about to come to a close. There was a long pause. Prabhupada was about to say, thank you very much, go. So I took my opportunity, I raised my hand, and I asked Srila Prabhupada, who is Meher Baba? And devotees are all looking at each other like, is he? He's like, I'm a long-haired hippie guy. He asked, and I'm kind of mumbling, Prabhupada couldn't really hear, and one of the devotees near him said, he's asking, who is Meher Baba? Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada paused, and he answered, I do not know. There are so many bogus Babas. And the crowd, there's a crowd here, I have to kind of like maybe a little more, this was a solid wall here with a fireplace. There was a hallway on the other side of what has now been opened up to make it a bigger temple room. So all the devotees were packed in, plus all the visitors from the temple and everything. And the crowd erupted in laughter and cheers of Jai Prabhupada, because Prabhupada was famous at that time for talking about bogus yogis and bogus babas like that. He was blasting all the bogus gurus that were coming. So Prabhupada says, I do not know. There's so many bogus babas. And the crowd cheers and laughs, and then Prabhupada asked me, as the laughter subsided, Prabhupada asked, what does it matter who is Meher Baba? And now that's a question to me. I've got to justify why I asked this foolish question. I'm about to answer, he claims to be, and Prabhupada cuts me off and says, just know who is Krishna. That is sufficient. Why should I run to know this and that? Just know who is Krishna. That is sufficient. Why should I run to know this and that? And there's another pause, because that's settled in. That's really settled. That was the answer for the whole day, actually. There's all these people asking about this and that, but just know who is Krishna. That is sufficient. Prabhupada said that a lot. Just know who is Krishna. And then he asked, is that all right? So that was my personal contact with Srila Prabhupada. I asked a foolish question in front of all the Damodar Brahmacharis and Satsarup Maharaj's library party. All these high-powered preachers were here. And Hare Krishna, I'm very grateful for it. I never left after that.
Oh, Prabhu, one question. Hey, Prabhu, I have one question.
Thank you, Param.
I want to say one more thing. Just one more thing.
Thank you, Parampara Prabhu. By the way, he is the father of Jia.
John Kavish.
Prabhu.
I want to to say that there was a devotee here, Nitai Gaur Sundar, met Srila Prabhupada in Baltimore at that time. He was studying at John Hopkins. And he's on the list. Okay, good. Nitai Gaur Sundar was embraced by Srila Prabhupada.
So now I will request Bakula Prabhu. Thank you, Parampara Prabhu, for sharing. So Bakula Prabhu, he is also senior here.
Jai Prabhu, thank you very much. My story is short. I came here 1 week before Prabhupada came, and with my wife, and we decided to stay and help out because people were doing a lot of work here. I was a carpenter, and I just kind of fell into helping everybody out. And I really didn't even know until after Prabhupada got here that there was a Mount because we worked all night, we worked through the night. Worked, basically 24 hours. And after Prabhupada got here, I found that there's a Mount in the morning, 4 in the morning. Somebody got me up, and I was like, what is this? But they were talking about Sudama Maharaj. I remember seeing him dancing here. He danced in front of the deity. His dance routine went all the way back to about a bit. That's weird. Yeah, he was a phenomenon. Oh, good. Yeah, he was a phenomenal dancer. He really, was amazing. And anyway, I wonder if I can go back over all my what I just said. But anyway, I got here with my wife, and we helped out. Prabhupada came. A week later, Prabhupada, and I remember seeing Prabhupada get out of the car in the driveway here, and he came up and went to the deity, paid his obeisances, and then he came back and sat on the Vyasan, and that's when he said, Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful. And Lord Nityananda is even more merciful. And as he's been saying this, his voice cracked, and he had tears. It was a very kind of a moving scene there, and it's like standing right next to the Yasasan. So after Prabhupada, he did some classes, he did some lectures here. He was here for 3 days, and we just stayed after that. Me and my wife just stayed. We stayed in one of the rooms up there, and became devotees. And I guess it was about a year later that we got initiated. We got initiated at the same time as Prabhupada. There was also a devotee named Naguna who was with us. He was also got initiated same time. Of course, he's deceased now, but he was a really wonderful devotee. Prabhupada stayed up in that building there, up on the top floor. You go up the back stairs. And, yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. I had a dream after that night, after Prabhupada was here. And it was like really one of those vivid, really vivid dreams that you get, It's actually like you really feel like. And in the dream, I was guarding Prabhupada. I had a gun and everything. I was standing outside Prabhupada's room. Guarding, of course, it was just a dream, but I had a great, guard of Prabhupada. Being here and listening to the devotees, one thing about that week was there was the devotees were practicing a play. It's a play about the Kazi, Lord Chaitanya and the Kazi. And every day they were in here, practicing this play, shouting their lines out, Sometimes when they weren't in here, they were still praying. They were still shouting their lines out. It seems like they're shouting their lines out the whole time. That was kind of an amazing thing. Then they did the play in front of Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, this is better than my books, these plays. Prabhupada really appreciated the effort there. I really don't have too much more to say except that Prabhupada gave us a great gift in the books that he translated, which had, it's basically that association with Prabhupada, reading the books. All right, yeah. All right, I'm done.
Hare Krishna.
Just stand there. You can sit here. I can.
There's 5 chairs.
You're fine.
Thank you, but I'm not a speaker. I'm trying to be a good listener because of my profession being psychiatrist. But here we have a good speaker here. Vesa Prabhu is here, Amrendra Prabhu is here, who can take you to Prabhupada's mercy. But I did have mercy of Prabhupada. I remember July 3rd, 1976, Prabhupada arrived in National Airport, now regular National Airport. We all were there, and as Chandrasekhar Prabhu was describing, hundreds of devotees chanting. Nobody can hear anything. It was pandemonium for a while. And then on July 4th morning, me and another friend of mine, who's Bengali, chartered accountant, and we went to Bhutami. And Rupanuga was giving the Prabhupada tour of the property. Coming out down the hill, we paid all officers. As soon as Prabhupada saw us Indian, he started speaking in Hindi. So we asked where we were from and things like that. So that was the encounter and for morning walk that day. So it is very difficult for me to speak all the details, but just mercy. I was there for morning walks, every darshan. One day Rupanuga Prabhu asked me that last day of darshan that you stay out there, a lot of people there. You have been darshan? I said, yes, Prabhu. I was sitting outside chanting on my beach, and then one devotee came running. Prabhupada wants to come in. So I went in there. There was a letter came which was in Hindi. So Prabhupada wanted me to read that letter, and And I just got in there and never left. And then next morning we went to Prabhupada leaving to it again National Airport, main Rupanuga Prabhu, and when the airport we went up to the gate. That's where I got my embrace. So well, I have not been up to the park. Must say I got that track. Thank you.
All the devotees were making a commotion, taking up all the seats. And so Rupanuga stood up and he said, "All the devotees, leave the area." Prabhupada started to get up. Not you, Srila Prabhupada.
As you know, Prabhupada was very expert in many things. That's why he could, with the 40 rupees, he could start the big movement in this, on the whole world. One pastime is that our old High Griva Prabhu from New Vrindavan. And he kind of thought that Prabhupada is going to make me temple president. And he had made a list of all the things why I am going to not become temple president. Prabhupada said, I don't want to be temple president. So he had made a whole list of the things which I'm going to, Prabhupada says something, I will say no. Prabhupada said, I will say no. That's why he had made a list. And he had kept in his pocket. Prabhupada knew what he was thinking. So when he came, and he was recently just married with a child, he had a child. So Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is saying, and he had all this in his pocket, why? So Prabhupada is saying him, so you have to take sannyas. And he said, what? I'm just married and I have a son, and he's telling me to make a sannyas. Yeah, you have to take sannyas. Oh, you just take sannyas. And Prabhupada he kept saying, and ultimately it came to the point where he had to agree, okay, Prabhupada, I'll become the temple president. So he had a whole this list, but he couldn't. So that's where Srila Prabhupada is. Another one is that Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj, he was sent alone, as you know. Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj is from Odisha. And Srila Prabhupada sent him from Vrindavan to start something there in Bhubaneswar, in his place, Odisha. So Gaur Govind Maharaj is saying, Srila Prabhupada is sending me alone. And no money. So Srila Prabhupada said, you are going in your own state. I went to America with 40 rupees in my pocket and I had nobody, I didn't know anybody, and you are going in your own state. What you talk about money and the manpower, it's already, you go there. So that was Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj, but he had a full faith in the Prabhupada's instructions. That was the point. And he went there, he stayed there. Where he stayed there, at the place where he was staying, it was outskirts of the Bhubaneswar, where during the daytime, even rickshawala would not go there because of the dacoits. Rickshawala would think that if we go there, some dacoits will kill us. And that is the place Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj was staying, in the small little hut. Because Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj used to say that I am not qualified, but my spiritual master is qualified. I am just following his instruction and going there and doing it. So that is And by the potency of with the order of the spiritual master, if he decide to follow, the power also comes with it. That's the point, if he followed it. See? And that was the point, he had full faith, and that's why he was able to open the center in Bhubaneswar. And now we know that at that time it was like decades, but now is no places, everything is full completely with the colonies and with all the markets and everything. So that's, we can learn from this how Srila Prabhupada, with the potency of the instruction of the spiritual master, that potency and power also comes with it. It's question of us following. So now I'm going to request Leelananda Prabhu to say something, and then Amrendra Prabhu, and then of course our temple president.
Although I was initiated by Prabhupada in 1976 in Brazil, I actually never met Prabhupada. For those like us in distant places where Prabhupada could not come, we were initiated by mail. So I remember when the mail came, and the mail was there in the Veda base, and I have a copy. It was not just my name, it was like 20 of us. I was one of them. And it was a big excitement. So tomorrow is your initiation. Prabhupada is accepting you as a disciple. It was a huge thing. We were coming from Sunday Kirtan. And I heard just this past few days from a god brother of mine that was initiated during that time, an amazing story. His name was Bhakta Daniel. And he was visiting the temple. And one night he was invited to stay at the temple and to sleep at the temple. And he had a dream. And in that dream, Prabhupada came to him and said, "You need some training. I'm going to send Deva Shrestha to train you up." So the next day after the morning program, Viraha Prakash, another god brother, called him. Viraha Prakash was the temple president. He called him and said, "You know, I'm going to assign Deva Shrestha to teach you Krishna consciousness." So, wow, this master is really powerful. And Deva Shrestha was preaching to him 8 hours a day, Krishna consciousness, doing Sankirtan with him, traveling. In a story, somebody said that the Radha Damodar name that came up several times, the devotees of the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party were going up to Prabhupada and giving a rose. There's a story behind that. I don't know if you know, but Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the GBC for India. But no, India now has many temples and many wonderful devotees and facilities. Those days was just sacrifice. Actually, Prabhupada said, America gave me everything. Gave me men, gave me books, gave me power. India only gave me headache. At that time, Prabhupada, it was so hard to get anything done in India. Everything was a sacrifice. So gave you only headache. So Tamal Krishna one day, after all that headache, went to Prabhupada and said, "Prabhupada, I want to go back to America." He said, "What are you going to do in America?" "I'm going to preach." Prabhupada said, "Preaching means devotees, means book distribution." You know, Prabhupada had a criteria of how a preacher is advancing based on the number of books distributed, based on the number of temples open, and based on the number of devotees joining. He had this criteria. Okay? So Tamal Krishna said, "Prabhupada, when you arrive in the US, I'm going to have 20 new devotees for you to initiate." And when Prabhupada arrived here, these 20 new devotees were giving the rose to Prabhupada, and Tamal Krishna said he was shaving the head of number 20. So, yes, that's what he went up with. Each one of them had a rose to give to Prabhupada. So many stories. Can I say something else? Okay. No, so many wonderful things. This I heard from Achyutananda. Achyutananda lives very close to my business, and he's an amazing personality. The other day he came to the business, and he just comes in and out like a flash, but he said, "Prabhupada said, in America you have gold on the street." So he said he was with Prabhupada in Calcutta, and he saw that the deity of Krishna, the flute, was on the opposite side. And said, Prabhupada, Krishna's flute is on the opposite side. Prabhupada looked at it and said, "Only Krishna can play flute on both sides." And Prabhupada is amazing. Personally, in my life, Prabhupada made a radical change in my life. I was a teacher, 18 years old. I was teaching adult education. And I was in love with this girl. I would die if I would not be with her. I would die. But then I went to the temple. I got a book on the street. And on those days, the movement was so powerful that you got a book, you could feel the vibration of the book. So when he tried to sell me the book, he's coming from one side on the street and I'm coming from the other side. And when I saw that person with a shaved head that I had never seen before, with those bed sheets, orange color, I immediately went to the other side of the street. Immediately. But he was so smart, he also moved to the other side. And suddenly we collide, and he puts a book on my hand, and I throw the book back at him and say, I already have this book. And in a flash he said, but there's a new one you don't have. Immediately. And then I looked at the front cover of the Shishopanishad, Sri Keshava, and the back cover, Prabhupada, and he said, this book is 5,000 years old. And I actually understood that Prabhupada was 5,000 years old. I said, wow. I was like completely paralyzed at that moment. And I bought the book and I went to the temple for the first time, and that day was my girlfriend's birthday. And after the temple I went to her birthday, and she was all beautiful with makeup and everything. But by the time I got there, I stayed for 5 minutes. I left, and after spending the whole day in the temple, I never went back, never heard of her. She never heard back of me. I completely lost all the interest. So Prabhupada is so powerful. He can clean our hearts. But there's one important thing I would like to say, and then I'm going to end. When Brahmananda was in Africa preaching, he sent a picture to Prabhupada. He was surrounded with devotees, and Prabhupada wrote back and said, how many are local people? How many are local people that joined there from Africa? It's beautiful that we have the Indian community joining. This is wonderful. Like I gave a class in San Diego, a Sunday Feast class, and after the class, one gentleman came to me and said, I have one more story for you to tell in your next class. Okay? I was born in Mathura. Do you know where I came to know Krishna? Here in San Diego. So that's the place I know. So it's wonderful that the Indian community is joining, because sometimes when you live close to the station, more often you miss the train. You know that? Yeah? So many Indians. I was working with this boy from Jaipur, and he didn't know the Radha Govinda temple. Yeah? So Prabhupada wanted the locals to join. We have to make an effort for the American people, for this to be filled with American people. Born here in America, the Americans, the Native Americans, the white fellows, the white folks. Okay? We have to make an effort. We have to preach to them. We have to make a temple that's attractive for them, that they will like, that they will join us and make the movement expand. Because in Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, clearly it says, that I came to save the Western countries. That's what it says, the mantra. The Prabhupada gave this mantra. And he's saying, this is my mission, to save the Western countries. And we have to help with that very strong. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Leela Prabhu. As far as the Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Los Angeles, at that time Los Angeles was the headquarters, world headquarters, in the beginning days. And Rukmini Dwarkad is famous. And he's talking with Rukmini Dwarkadish. He's talking. And Rukmini Dwarkad is saying them, telling him to go to India. And he said, no, this is my place. My place is here. My Guru Maharaj is told to preach the message in English language. This is my place. No, you go there. You go there. And that's what the conversation he had with him, and that's why he went to India. And then when he established the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, he's saying this, that because Rukmini Dwarkadhish told me to come to India, and because his point to Rukmini Dwarkadhish is that India has given me headache, because as we know, Srila Prabhupada tried so many years to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya in India, and also he would go to the families, and if they have 4 or 5 sons, he would say, just give me your one son, I will make him a Brahmana, and I will send him to the state for preaching. But Indians, and Maya is everywhere, it's not just amongst the Indians. Indians are attached to the families. I mean, it's there with the son and daughters, and particularly son. Westerners have Maya some other ways acting. Maya is acting, Maya is strong in everywhere. That's why Krishna says, Dukhala Shashvata. This material world is full of misery. It doesn't matter where we go. So, but Srila Prabhupada had that conversation. So I'm going to now request Vedasar Prabhu or Amraj Prabhu. Or Vedasar Prabhu, temple.
Asya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasati Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, first of all, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you all very much thank you Prabhu, for joining us in this beautiful celebration of Panihati and Rath Yatra festival. I feel extremely fortunate that I have had the great honor of given shelter at the Lotus Wheel of Srila Prabhupada in the ISKCON movement. My personal interaction with Prabhupada is only through his disciples. I have read his books. It is inspiring, no doubt. What inspires me more is that the personal touch that Srila Prabhupada had with all his disciples. It makes me, because Srila Prabhupada is very far away from me. I mean, I watch videos, you can hear classes, you can read books. I haven't touched him, I haven't seen him walk in front of my eyes. So it's been a little bit of a distant relationship with me. But one thing that I have strongly felt is that the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who were just regular young folks and crazy young people, some of them, and what an incredible impact they have had on the world. It was just one of my great fortunes, I feel, is the fact that I've hung around for long enough, almost 40 years now, and just there's a lot of mercy that flows through his disciples. Many very personable, sharing very intimate stories that sometimes they don't share in larger groups. And it made me fall in love with Srila Prabhupada, a person that I did not know and had a very distant relationship with. It brought me closer to him, because I was able to take the association of Srila Prabhupada disciples, who actually were true instruments of change in this world. They were messengers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, guided by the Commander-in-Chief. So for me, I feel extremely honored and inspired to be born in this Kali Yuga at this time, having the association of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. And I also urge all of you that, give another 10, 15, 20 years, the reality will hit where the Srila Prabhupada disciples will all go back to Srila Prabhupada in the spiritual world. And I pray that they stick around longer than that, but we have to take this opportunity very seriously. That they're here, they're still with us. Get their association, hear more and more about what Srila Prabhupada taught them, how he inspired them. It's what keeps me going. Srila Prabhupada is what keeps me going. A confession. I was initiated when I was 12 years old, and then my guru ceased to practice in good standing. Then I got initiated again, and then my guru ceased to practice active Krishna consciousness. And I remember my heart was, I felt like it was being broken. And one thing that held me together, I remember very clearly, going to Srila Prabhupada's room in Mayapur in the Lotus building and asking him if he was real and if all of this was all real. Am I living in some la-la land, dreamland? Because it's a very common expression in America, they say you drank the Kool-Aid. I didn't know what it meant. So at that time I had this thing in my head that maybe this is all a hoax. So I had this confusion for quite some time, and then recently I want to say that Bhakti Charu Swami, very amazing personality, that for the last 2 years before he left this world, somehow he was very kind to me for no reason. I didn't do anything special. But he was very kind, and I got to visit him at least 2-3 times a year in the land. And I still had some, we always have doubts. The mind provides us a lot of doubts, at least for me. So I was asking him questions. And he mentioned one thing. He says, Srila Prabhupada is there with you, Veda. And I said, Maharaj, it sounds really nice. It's very encouraging, Srila Prabhupada is with me, but I don't feel anything. How is it that when I have challenges in spiritual life, how do I communicate with him? And especially when, people like you, all of you leave, where do we go? So he said, this is where you're wrong, he said. And I said, please, prove me wrong. So he mentioned many times that Prabhupada had told him that you just keep on practicing your spiritual life. And when you really need him and you pray sincerely to Prabhupada, then he will actually come. He will give you a message through his disciples or in your dreams, somehow or other. He will give you the message and he will give you the answers. And I thought to myself, this is still too, pie in the sky. People always sell a good story. So in my mind I was thinking, yes, this sounds good, but will it really work? Long story short, I would say that after 2 of my spiritual masters left, practicing active Krishna consciousness, for the 3rd time, I took shelter of Prabhupada because he told me, he says, you don't have to take reinitiation. You just take shelter of Prabhupada. You just fall at his feet and you just cry and you ask him to guide you and he will do it. I guarantee you, he said. And I said, okay. I'm a very skeptical person by nature, but I like to accept. So I was praying really, really, really hard because this is my personal spiritual journey and I don't know how it will be applicable to you. For me, I struggled with remaining fixed and practicing Krishna consciousness. There were many times in my mind where I said, this is not for me. It seems like people outside are less cruel, more nice, because everything outside looks more green, So this is what I was thinking, and I prayed really, really hard. In my dream, this is how I'm a very sentimental person. In my dream, I remember one Swami in ISKCON was chastising me. He's active, heavily chastising me. And I said, I'm done. I'm done. I can't handle this. My false ego to get smashed. And I remember very clearly Bhakti Chirur Maharaj's words. He said, you just go to Prabhupada, you cry and you tell him your pains, and he'll give you the answers. So I remember in my dream, Srila Prabhupada came. You know, he comes to so many people's dreams. For me, he just said, what's the problem? You think if you go outside there will be no problems? And I said, well, the people outside look nicer. He said, you want to go try? I said, what do you think? He said, you have the best deal. He said, these devotees are so loving and caring. I have personally left them for people like you to deal with your false ego problems. And I was thinking, he's also chastising me. This was a little bit more, more recent. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking, that the words of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and their experiences with Prabhupada and the sheer power of their personal execution of Prabhupada's orders gives them so much power, as Mother Prabhu was saying, that if we simply follow humbly, with sincerity, the instructions, I do feel that Prabhupada's presence, everyone is eligible to feel. You can definitely feel his presence if we really sincerely and humbly pray that, please, sincerely pray to Srila Prabhupada and follow in the footsteps that he has left behind. So this is my little personal journey with Prabhupada. I've had not a very loving relationship, very distant one, to a very personal one. Whenever I have issues, he is my go-to, and there are also a lot of senior disciples of his who are always happy to, share their spiritual realizations and the struggles in their path. So this was my remembrance of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. Of course, there are so many disciples who have been extremely kind to me. I couldn't name them because it'll take me a little long and tell you how I have been kind recipient of their mercy. But yes, we should definitely, with strong conviction, remember that Srila Prabhupada has never left us, and he will never leave us till every one of us go back home, back to God. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Veda. Thank you for sharing. So as you said before, Prabhupada is here. He is here for his disciple. He is for his grand disciple. He is for his great grand disciple. He is for everybody. It's just a question of individually go to him, really sincerely, pray to him, and he gives guidance through directly or through his disciple. So I'm going to now request Amarendra Prabhu, please. And after, are there any of you who is here in the audience, because I don't know any of you who are Prabhupada disciples here, any of you in the audience, please let me know, because I don't know. Or any of you who had a personal darshan, personal darshan of Prabhupada, or you saw and you felt something, please let us know. One thing I can tell because I'm going to go. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and this is a true one. And he would sit in the courtyard in Vrindavan. If you go to Vrindavan temple and under the tree, he would sit and his disciples sit, And in Vrindavan, usually, Delhi walas, big businessmen, they come to Vrindavan because that is their place to come to Vrindavan and have darshan of the deities, and they go. So one of the jeweler, he used to come to Vrindavan, and he would just, Srila Prabhupada sitting there in the courtyard with his disciples, and he was thinking He was a big businessman, jeweler, and he's thinking, now this is in Hindi, he is saying, I wish I could wear, because Srila Prabhupada has saffron clothes, and he was attracted to saffron clothes. So he is thinking that I wish I could have those clothes like that. And you believe me not, after coming few times, he's come to Vrindavan and he would meet Prabhupada. And, he didn't talk to Prabhupada, but he would see Prabhupada. And after that, he lost his business. Now, this is not discouraging, please. He lost his business. His son is away. And then, after Prabhupada, he's joining to ISKCON. And he's wearing his brahmachari, wearing the saffron cloths, initiated by the present gurus, and he was disciple, and he moved in Vrindavan, and with the saffron cloths, the brahmachari, he was staying in Vrindavan. Okay, so that is the potential of Srila Prabhupada. So now I'm going to give you. No, that was the disciple of Loknath Maharaj in Delhi. Yeah. So now I'm going to give Amrendra Prabhu. He will tell, I'm sure, so many pastimes.
Hare Krishna. I would like to request if there's anybody who would like to speak, because I don't want to have the audacity of speaking before any of you. So if there's anybody who would like to speak, you're welcome. Okay. Taking His Grace Bhadra Prabhu's order on my head, I will try to speak something. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Before I begin, I would like to seek the blessings of all the senior Prabhupada disciples who are present. I am a very small baby who doesn't know anything. So, Prabhu, thank you. All Prabhus, thank you. I offer my obeisances to you. Unshackled. The Srimad Bhagavatam describes Shrutasya pumsam suchirashramasya nanvanjasa suribhiriditartaha tattat gunanushravanam mukunda padaravindam hridayeshu yesham. The Bhagavatam describes that it is very auspicious to hear about Krishna. Certainly the most auspicious. However, there is something more auspicious than hearing about Krishna. What is that? The Srimad Bhagavatam describes Shrutasya pumsam suchira shramasya nanvanjasa suri viridi tartaha. That if someone studies the Shastra and hears about Krishna for lifetimes, then Krishna, being pleased with them, gives them a benediction. And what is that? Tattat gunanu shravanam mukunda padaravindam hridayeshu yesham. When we hear about Krishna for lifetimes and we please Him, then Krishna, as a reciprocative expression of mercy, gives us a chance to sit in an assembly, to listen to the glories of a pure Vaishnava. So when we are all sitting here discussing about Srila Prabhupada, especially those like me, in the younger generation and faithless, we should not think, oh, we are discussing about Prabhupada, when is the actual class going to begin? We shouldn't think like that. Because the fruit of listening to classes is the chance to sit in an assembly where pure Vaishnavas are glorified. In the Puranas, there is a statement given by Bhakti Devi herself. Who is Bhakti Devi? The goddess of devotion. There's a conversation that she has with Narada Muni. And she tells Narada Muni, the goddess of devotion, bhakti. This is found in the Padma Puran and Skanda Puran. She tells Narada Muni, this conversation is found in the Puranas on the banks of the Jamuna in Vrindavan. Narada Muni asks her, who are you? And why are you so thin and malnutritioned? What is wrong with you? You seem to be old, with disabled hair and torn clothes. So she mentions, I am Bhakti Devi. And it's been such a long time that people have actually taken advantage of my path and performed pure, unmotivated, unadulterated, uninterrupted devotional service. Narada Muni said, what do you think of your future? And she says, Idam sthanam parityajya videsham gamyate maya. Oh Narada Muni, that time will come very soon in Kali Yuga when I will give up Vrindavan and I will be carried by a very great Mahapurush across the seas into the western soil. This is there in the Puranas. I can show you the reference for this. And who is this Mahapurusha? And it's very simple. Sometimes people can think, listening to this, oh, maybe it's the other side of the Jamuna. Or maybe it's the other side of the country in India. Maybe going from the banks of Jamuna to the banks of Ganga, right? But that's not the word. In Sanskrit, the word used is Videsham, which means foreign land. And it's very interesting. When Bhakti Devi says this to Narada Muni, she doesn't say, I am going to travel. She's not speaking in active voice. She speaks in passive voice. Gamyate maya, which means I will be taken there by someone. She's not saying on my potency as the goddess of devotion, I am going to travel. She doesn't say that. She says, by the power of devotion, one very great soul is going to take me to foreign lands. So what we are witnessing now is the foretelling found in the Puranas. This is not just one of the many movements that we see in this world. Dear devotees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, in the pages of Chaitanya Mangal, written by Lochan Das Thakur, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jadi papi dharma chhadi dure deshe jai, mora senapati bhakta jaive tathai. What does this mean in Bengali? Mahaprabhu is saying, Jadi papi, if sinful people, dharma chhadi dur deshe jai, if people who are sinful, they give up religion and spiritual practice and they try to hide in foreign lands, Mahaprabhu says, no problem. Mora senapati bhakta jaive tathai. My commander-in-chief, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada is going to go there and save all of them. And we are all those fortunate recipients. Now the question could be, what did we do in our last lives? What did we do? Did we do a lot of chanting? Did we pray, stand on one leg like Dhruva Maharaj in Madhuvan? Or did we get tossed into fire and thrown into cliffs like Prahlad? Or were we calling out like Gajendra? No. We didn't do anything. What came to us is Prabhupada's mercy. We didn't do anything. When Prabhupada was asked about this, Srila Prabhupada said, you had no qualification. I made your qualification. So dear devotees, with that we must understand, we are all in Gaura Leela. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes continue even this very day. It's not that it was just 500 years ago. Mahaprabhu came, but before he came, there were associates like Srivas Thakur, there were associates like Advaita Acharya, there were associates like Haridas Thakur. And then when Mahaprabhu came, there were associates with him. And then when Mahaprabhu departed, there were associates who came later, like Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasa Acharya, Shamananda Prabhu, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan. And the line continues up to Srila Prabhupada and beyond. And we all have the chance to participate in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So we are witnessing history at the present. But for that, we have to join the party. We can't be half-baked cookies. We have to accept. We can't just hang around there and then go back home back to Godhead. We have to be Krishnized. We have to be Prabhupadized completely. Giving ourselves to Srila Prabhupada through thought, word and deed. Some of us may get discouraged, but I'm not that surrendered. But no problem. We still have good fortune. I would like to tell you a story in this regard, if all of you give me your permission.
Yeah.
one devotee was saying this story from Bangalore in India. You see, they were building some temple there or some center there, and there was a condition. There was a proper rule that every devotee had to collect some life members every month, which means you had to get some donations and help in the temple. And the number was you had to bring in 3 life members every month. Now here's a devotee, it's the 20th of the month, and he has made only 1 life member. So he has to make 2 more, and there's only 10 days to go. What does he do? There's no internet at that time. We're talking about good 30 years ago. So there's no way he can do some Google search and find out whom to go to. So he goes to a telephone directory where you have the telephone numbers of the biggest businessmen and industrialists in the city. And he goes to the Bengali last names. Because his selling point is, he can go to a Bengali businessman and say, you're a Bengali, my guru's a Bengali, let's just join hands, and ask for donation. So he goes through the telephone directory and he comes to a name, Ganguly, which is a typical Bengali name, right? So he calls up and he says, I'm from the Hare Krishna movement, I want to come and meet you. And he says, sure, you can come at 11 o'clock in the morning. Fair enough. This devotee drives up there, and lo and behold, it's a big industrial center, chemical factories, many big buildings and structures, and he thinks, I'm going to get lost here. There's no way this businessman is going to even entertain me, being a Hare Krishna with dhoti and kurta and tilak and shaved head. He's not going to give me time. And it's 11 o'clock, he's still going through one secretary after another secretary after another secretary, and there's a personal assistant, and he thinks, I'm going to miss the bus. Finally, he gets to this Mr. Ganguly. Mr. Ganguly says, yes. Said, can I have 2 minutes with you? He said, sure, come in. So now this devotee knows it's only 2 minutes that he has, and he has to get some donation for the temple. So he puts up the books of Srila Prabhupada, he gives some pictures of Radha Krishna, some incense sticks. He puts out all of that and starts mumbling and grumbling in 2 minutes that I'm a devotee and we're ISKCON, and he's short of words, he doesn't know, time is ticking, and is a big businessman. And then finally the businessman says, so what do you want? He says, maybe some donation. He says, how much? Now the devotee, he just gets something that's good, right? So he says, maybe life membership. So the businessman says, how much is that? So that time, it was 2,000 rupees, which is like $30, right? So he says, 2,000 rupees. Now this Mr. Ganguly, the businessman, he takes his checkbook and writes a check for 20,000 rupees, which is 10 times of what he had asked for. Now this devotee is traumatized. He's like shivering. Such a big amount he's never seen, because you just give it to the temple, whatever you get. So he's a brahmachari, he doesn't know. 20,000 rupees. He looks at him. He doesn't know what to do. Now the businessman looks at him and he says, sit down, I want to tell you a story. Now the devotee says, sure. The businessman said, don't think that I got convinced by your talking. The devotee says, I don't think I convinced you either. I don't know why you gave me such a big amount. And Mr. Ganguly said, there is a history to this. Attentively, dear devotees, if you listen, you'll have more smiles on your face. He said, my father, Senior Ganguly, was the classmate of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, whom you're trying to represent as an organization, he was the classmate of my father. And they would play chess together as children. They were in the same school. And he said, your Prabhupada used to come to my house so many times. And my father would go to his home. They're from Calcutta but now moved to Bangalore. So they would play chess. And this devotee is, it's like nectar. He doesn't get this even in the temple. This Harikatha. So he says, please continue, I want to hear more. The businessman says, there was a deal between both of them, my father and Prabhupada. Both of them would get their lunch box and keep it next to the chessboard. Whoever wins the game can conquer the lunch box of the other. And he said, my father was always hungry. Because Srila Prabhupada was so good at chess, he would always defeat my father and win over his lunch box. One time Srila Prabhupada as a child, now this junior Ganguly is speaking, and he said one time, Srila Prabhupada asked my father, what do you want to become when you grow up? And my father said, I want to be a Sanskrit scholar. And sure enough, that's what he became in the future. And his father, now the senior Ganguly, asked Prabhupada, as a child, Abhay, Babu, as a child, what do you want to become when you grow up? Prabhupada said, time will tell. And then Prabhupada became very grave between a chess game, and he said, I am going to do something, but I need your help for that. I will need your help as a Sanskrit scholar to help in what I'm going to do. Sure enough, both grow up. Prabhupada, we read the Leela Amrit, and Prabhupada comes to America, becomes the Jagat Guru. And this senior Ganguly, he gets married and has children and becomes a Sanskrit scholar, becomes a Sanskrit professor. All his life teaches Sanskrit. And now he gets to know his chess friend, who used to win over his lunch tiffin box, has become Jagat Guru. He has like 10,000 disciples, 5,000 disciples, and he's the guru of the whole world. And he feels, I knew he was great. Prabhupada, after his traveling, comes to Calcutta for the class in the ISKCON temple. And senior Ganguly's wife and his son, who is the present junior Ganguly, who's speaking this whole thing as a businessman, he was a child, they both attend the class. The senior Ganguly doesn't go for the class, but his wife and his son, surely they go. And Prabhupada finishes the Jai Radha Madhava.
Everybody move forward. Everybody please move forward.
You see, this is the proof. When you hear about Prabhupada, we move forward in life. Please come ahead. So this junior Ganguly, as a child with his mother, goes to see Srila Prabhupada in the temple, in the Calcutta temple. And Prabhupada finishes Jai Radha Madhava and looks around in the audience and looks at this little boy who has the same face as his father, with whom Prabhupada played chess 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Prabhupada looks at him. He says, Ganguly? He said, yes. He said, your father, senior Ganguly? And then Prabhupada starts speaking in Bengali naturally and starts telling all the details. Is he the same Sanskrit scholar? The boy is happy that his father is so famous that Prabhupada knows him. He said, yes, same. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada rubs his nose and looks at the young Ganguly. He said, best friends with your father. Where is he? 70-year-old now. Prabhupada 70, father must be 70. 1 year older to Prabhupada. So he said, where is your father now? He said, he's not keeping well. He's at home. Now Prabhupada has so much history with medicines. Prabhupada says, you mix everyone's sitting in the audience waiting for the class, and Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasas and speaking to this family about what their father, the boy's father, should have. Home remedies about how he could recover from a cough and cold or whatever. Prabhupada says, tell him to come tomorrow, I will see him. Now after the class, the boy and his mother go home and said, Father Prabhupada remembered you. And he said that you used to play chess with him. He said, I'm a small person. Conditioned soul, family life beaten up, over life, 50 years of work. He said, I'm very weak, Prabhupada's so great, I don't think I should go. He doesn't go. Next day, Prabhupada asks the son and the mother again, where is Ganguly? My friend, chess friend? Oh, he didn't come. Did you tell him I was remembering him? Yes. Prabhupada said, no problem, he doesn't want to come to see me, I will go and see him. Prabhupada takes off his cane with his disciples and, in a regal way, with his raised chin, in a regal Bengali style, he's moving his cane and starts walking with all the disciples. Now they're saying, where are we going? Prabhupada says, let's go for a walk and I'll take you to the lanes of Calcutta. Prabhupada remembers the whole geography so accurately. Turn right, turn left, go straight. And they come to a small place where Prabhupada climbs up the stairs, takes a right and knocks the right door, which is the house of Ganguly, where Prabhupada played chess. And Prabhupada tells his disciples, I used to come here to play chess. I know. Calcutta doesn't change. It's eternal. Prabhupada thinks it's eternal. It doesn't change. The places are still the same. So he knocks, and the young Ganguly, the boy, he opens, and where's your father? He's laying down on the bed. Prabhupada goes to him, and with his cane he pokes him on the tummy. With a cane he pokes him on the tummy to the senior Ganguly. He said, get up, your friend is here. And they start speaking in Bengali. Now all Western disciples, they don't understand what's happening. But Prabhupada speaking in Bengali to him. He said, why, you don't remember me? So of course I remember you. Oh, you remember, we used to play chess and I used to eat up your lunch, and they're chuckling and speaking in Bengali. He says, no, I'm, very old, I have health problems. Prabhupada said, so how's your Sanskrit teaching going? He said, I'm retired now, I'm not active. Prabhupada said, no, actual career begins after retirement. Prabhupada said, look at me. He said, you should start. He said, what should I do? Prabhupada said, I want my disciples to learn Sanskrit. Why don't you come with me? You come with me. He said, what will I do? You teach Sanskrit to my disciples. You come. And then Prabhupada now starts speaking in English so that all his disciples can understand. Prabhupada says, look, you're Jivatma, you're the spirit soul, I am the spirit soul. We have the same spiritual energy. Why are you weak? Get up. You come with me. I've come to take you. He said, but what can I do? Prabhupada said, no, you come with me. Don't give excuses. Come. And then Prabhupada sat there on the chair and started telling his disciples, you see, he was good. Right from his childhood, he used to score more than me. He had better grades than me, Prabhupada said. He said, I was better in mathematics. He was better in science. Prabhupada started speaking and recollecting all his childhood stories. Then Prabhupada told him, okay, you don't want to come. I came to see you. You come. Come with me. Then he offered obeisances. He said, I'm very happy you came. Then Prabhupada leaves with his disciples. Believe it or not, dear devotees, that very day he left his body. Senior Ganguly. Because of his association with Prabhupada right from childhood and offering service to Prabhupada by playing chess and giving him some pleasure or maybe offering his lunchbox to him. It so happened that although he lived all his life as a Sanskrit scholar, when the actual day came, the time of his departure, before he saw his departure, he saw his savior. Srila Prabhupada walked into his house, although he couldn't go and see. And Prabhupada said, come, I will take you. And everybody thought Prabhupada's talking about taking him on a world tour or something. But Prabhupada actually said, come, I have come to take you. Come with me. And that very evening, Senior Ganguly left his body, and the last thing that he said was, Prabhupada remembers me. All the story, Junior Ganguly is telling the life member, preaching brahmachari. And he tells him, your Guru Maharaj gave my father the spiritual world. Can't I give his disciple a small check? He said, I gave you the check of 20,000 rupees, not because of your preaching, but because of what your Guru Maharaj did to my father. I'm simply reciprocating. Anytime you need donations, please feel free to come to me, he said. Srila Prabhupada ki. So dear devotees, we all have hope. Every saint has had a past. Every sinner has a future. We may fall down many times, we may slip, we may skid, we may slip so many times. But we fall 7, we rise 8. Our sadhana is not our strength. Srila Prabhupada's mercy and his compassion is what we are all banking on. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Amrendra Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that nice...
Inmates, first class gentlemen. So Prabhupada had a sympathy for prisoners. And in 1924, the American Congress enacted the Exclusion of Orientals Act. That included India. So it wasn't possible to come here. However, that act was rescinded in 1965. Srila Prabhupada ki. So Prabhupada needed a few things to get here. He needed transport. How did Srila Prabhupada get here? Sumati Maraji. And as a motherly figure, she felt apprehensive. Prabhupada, don't go. It's a foreign environment. You won't do well there. But she did give Prabhupada transport. Prabhupada needed a sponsor. How did he get a sponsor? From Mr. Agarwal, the mature businessman, and his son in Pennsylvania, Gopal, sponsored him. Prabhupada needed a P form. He needed a no objection certificate. And he needed a host of things to leave the country. And they had just rescinded the Exclusions of Orientals Act. But he needed a visa. How did Prabhupada get his visa to come to America? Everybody who knows, raise your hand. See, I told you. How did I know that? Prabhupada needed a visa. So at the time, the technique was that you had to, the process was you had to approach a person of stature to get a letter of recommendation, a businessman or government official. So Prabhupada knew Dr. Radhakrishna, the former president of India, vice president, I'm not sure. At any rate, he was a big man. Prabhupada approached him and he said, you give me this letter of recommendation, I'm ready to go and fulfill the mission of my Guru Maharaj. Everything is in order. And like a brother, Dr. Radhakrishna, he said, no, you don't go. He wasn't enthusiastic like Mother Sumati Maraji. She is a mother and Dr. Radhakrishna is a brother. Said, no, I'm apprehensive for your welfare. And Prabhupada was upset because he is just almost able to go. He said, you give me this letter of recommendation. And Dr. Radhakrishna had heard about Srila Prabhupada's preaching in prisons. And what he said to him was, okay, then we'll set up a jail program for you at Midnapur Central Jail. And after that program, we'll see how things go. And then we'll talk about your letter of recommendation. And Srila Prabhupada said, very good. So Prabhupada went to the jail. He preached to the prisoners. And everybody loved Prabhupada, the administrators, the guards, and the prisoners. And the word got back to Dr. Radhakrishna, and he gave Prabhupada his letter of recommendation. With that letter, he got his visa. Srila Prabhupada ki. Now, I travel in to prisons in India, and I'll tell you one quick story, if that's all right. You got a second?
Jagapataka Maharaj is online.
Oh, online.
So would you like to listen to Jagapataka Swami?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Maharaj, can you hear me? Everyone is here in the temple.
Okay. So what do you want Guru Maharaj to speak on?
This is Panihati festival. Put him on the phone. New Panihati Dham in Atlanta.
Haribol.
Om
Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravash Pracharne.
Every saint of the divine is what God to this Subhane. Alright.
Should
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Guru Maharaj is speaking now.
So, I'm very happy to be talking to the devotees and Panihati Dham.
I'm very happy to talk to the devotees in New Panihati Dham.
I was thinking that I'd like to attend the rest of the 50th anniversary of the Rath Yatra in New York.
I was thinking that I would attend the festival in Atlanta and also the 50th Rath Yatra in New York.
But in India, since we've been locked down for 2 years, I'd like 3 or 4 temples which have to be inaugurated.
But in India, since we have been in lockdown for 2 years, there are 3 or 4 temples to be inaugurated.
And lots of devotees are waiting.
Lots of devotees are waiting.
And I'm sorry, I wrote a letter to the Shah apologizing for not attending this year's festival.
So I wrote a letter to Vedasar Prabhu about that we are not attending the festival this year.
But Panihati Dham is a very important place.
But New Panihati Dham is a very important place.
Prabhupada gave the name.
Srila Prabhupada gave that name.
And the deities of Lord Denied are installed.
And the deities of Sri Sri Gaur Nitai were installed.
And I was very important for saying that
it's a very important place because Srila Prabhupada sang the Paramakaruna song there.
I also installed the deities.
I also installed the Radha Madan Mohan deity.
I hope that the deities will be very nicely served.
I hope that the deities are being very nicely served.
Yes, they are.
This gangster in the old body of the dog.
So recently we gave initiation in the old Panihati Dham.
And who's not there, some days will be having the Panihati as well.
People are very enthusiastic over there, and in some days we would be having the Panihati festival there.
Anyway, I hope all the boys that do Panihati now, Atlanta will be very enthusiastic.
Anyway, I hope the devotees in New Panihati Dham in Atlanta would be very enthusiastic.
I'm thinking that sometime maybe in August, I'd like to visit the Panihati area.
August. Okay. I'm thinking sometime in August, I would like to visit New Panihati Dham again.
In the house, I don't know, September, October, whatever.
I've not seen the whole schedule, so I don't know whether it is August or September, October or November.
I'd like to visit this year, yeah.
But definitely, I would like to visit this year again. Vedasar Prabhu, how many devotees are there attending the festival?
We did not keep a count, but there were definitely, I want to say, over 1,000 devotees for Rath Yatra yesterday. And right now the temple room is full. So there's lots of devotees, Maharaj. But the only person who's missing is you.
Okay. Approximately, there was 1,000 devotees there in the Rath Yatra yesterday, and today the temple hall is full. They're missing your presence there, physical presence.
I hope that the operation was a success.
I hope that Vedasar Prabhu's operation was a success.
Thank all the devotees very much. They are participating in the Panihati festivals.
I would like to thank all the devotees very much for participating in the new Panihati festival.
I hope that the Rath Yatra yesterday was a great success.
I hope that the Rath Yatra yesterday was a grand success. I wonder where you went.
We did Rath Yatra in downtown Atlanta.
They did Rath Yatra in downtown Atlanta.
That's great.
Wow, that's great.
Initially there was about 200 devotees, and we were thinking, why is there so few devotees? But by the middle of the Rath Yatra, somehow devotees kept coming in from all directions.
Haribol.
It's not, they all attractive. All pleasure.
So, Lord Krishna is all attractive and reservoir of all pleasure.
So, it's nice that he invited, he brought all the people to the Rath Yatra.
Wow. It's nice that he brought all the people to the Rath Yatra.
I had the special Divana, I needed there anyway. I had special Divana, I needed there. If I had spiritual Divana,
If I had a spiritual Vimana, I would be in Atlanta.
yeah, South India had a checkup with a doctor.
Here in South India, I had a checkup with the doctor.
An operation of my eye.
He had an operation on his eye.
I had a root canal.
I had a root canal.
I had to take care of all my health issues.
So I'll take care of all my health issues.
Then they had the 10th anniversary of the Chennai deities.
And then we had the 10th anniversary of the Chennai deity.
So they had a Pushpa Abhishek.
And where they had a Pushpa Abhishek.
So I was like, oh, but I did the Panihati festival.
Still, it was my hope to visit the new Panihati festival.
They sent me the invitation of all the festivals, so I got 10
Please send me the invitation of the
festivals.
festivals. Yes. Festivals.
So I hope everybody is very enthusiastic.
I hope that everybody is very enthusiastic
to what? To have the cultural program of Prabhupada.
We want to have the transcendental program that Srila Prabhupada gave us.
He called the place Prabhupada had to go. We want everyone to be in the world of responders to the Son.
So he named the place as New Panihati Dham, and we want all of you to keep the mood of prasadam distribution as much as possible. And the other festivals.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Assembled in New Panihati Dham. Krishnir Matirastu.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you much.
Recently, I inaugurated a temple in Bihar, Patna.
And one person was inspired by donated $10 crores.
And there was a person who was inspired and he donated 27 crore rupees. That's almost $4 million.
I know that someone will be inspired and donate millions of dollars and nobody has to know.
We hope that someone will be inspired and would donate millions of dollars to New Panihati Dham.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bruce.
Guru Maharaj has to go to bed now. Thank you very much, all of you, for calling Guru Maharaj. He was very happy talking to all of you. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I need to go now, and somebody's blocking my car. It's a silver Honda Accord, plate number ending 4591.